I want to give you like 8 things that are a part of a business plan. You can kind of pick and choose depending on what your investor needs, but generally you'll want these 8 things. Number 1 is an executive summary.
This is Truly Independent, a show that demystifies the indie film journey by documenting the process of releasing independent films in theaters. Each week, Garrett, Batty, and I, Darren Smith, will update you on our journey, bringing guests to share their insights into the process and answer your questions.
Darren, how are you? Good to see you.
You too, man. I'm great. I'm coming off a high of last night. I did a little guest lecture at the local university, 5 minutes from my house, Utah Valley University. A friend of ours teaches a producing class there and asked me to come and talk to about 15 aspiring filmmakers. There was one kid there that had done 56 short films in the last 5 years. I was like, dude, you're going to be fine. But it was a ton of fun. So I'm rolling off of that high. I'm feeling jazzed today. I'm excited for what we're going to talk about.
Good. Well, fantastic. It's good to see you. Welcome, listeners, to another episode of Truly Independent. Darren Smith and I, Garrett, Batty, are doing everything we can to demystify the independent film experience, from pitching to creating to distributing to actually making the movie.
Yeah.
And I love doing this. I love talking about it every week with you, Darren. So thanks very much for jumping back on.
Yeah, of course. Nobody can get on my calendar Tuesday mornings because that's when we record the podcast. So
it's blocked off. That's right. Yeah. And I am coming off of a high today because today is officially, we're recording this on February 11th. Today is officially Faith of Angels release day on Angel Studios. So for all those who are familiar with Angel Studios and the incredible independent film distributor that they are, you can now log on to their site, Angel Studios, and watch Faith of Angels as a guild member. I think it's a subscription model. It's an incredible model. They're seeing amazing growth right now, and Faith of Angels is going to be a part of that.
Yeah, super excited. I'm ready for the billboard at University Mall that says, #1 movie on the platform, Faith of Angels. Go watch it now.
That's right. Yeah. So
maybe we'll just need to mock it up and put it on the internet, and then people will believe that it happened.
Yeah, there you go.
Marketing.
No, that is not a tactic we're going to use. Truth and honesty in marketing, that's what we're trying to use. But yeah, so we're very excited that Faith of Angels is out. And it's about growing the audience. So we are still streaming with Living Scriptures, which has an audience of, so many thousand subscribers. And now Angel is going bigger. It has a much bigger audience. And then next month we'll make some announcements about where we're playing. We've already got that in the works.
Super fun. It's exciting. I'm kind of out of the loop now. We're not talking about the digital distribution and other sales of the movie, but I love the updates, and it's always fun to be like, ooh, I can go post about it now. And that's another thing that makes us look good as filmmakers, makes the movie look good, that it's getting the kind of demand and traction that it has. And so it's exciting to hear. Happy and congratulations on release day.
Thanks, man. Yeah. Okay. But we're not going to rest. We're not going to be idle and just focus on what we've done in the past. We're continuing to pitch and develop and hopefully create more films. This week, I wanted to talk about a business plan and what we need as independent filmmakers to go into our business plan. And this comes from a kind of a personal, not personal like, hey, should I share this? But just my own experience last week, pitching a lot of different ideas. Somebody came to me with an idea to pitch, and they said, hey, can you take this to some of your distributor friends? I'm like, sure, I'll take it. And so I started talking with the distributor, and they came back and said, it's a great idea, but there's no business model here. There's no business plan, and we can't really consider the movie without looking at a business plan. And so it makes sense. I went back to the filmmaker and said, they love the idea. They just want to see the business plan. And the filmmaker said, what is that? I thought, Oh, okay. Well, that's good to know, and probably a good topic. Having done this before, it's just kind of part of the nature of when I'm pitching, I put together all of these things. And so I was able to help them put together over the past week a business plan that will help them pitch. So I wanted to talk about those elements. What are your thoughts on that, Darren? Kind of an overview. Is that something we should be doing?
Yeah, I have opinions about business plans. I generally don't make them until someone asks for them. But there are a lot of filmmakers online that will tell you it's essential, it costs money, you should hire them to do it. And the incentives are very much in their favor of like, yeah, the more I can get filmmakers to believe that business plans are essential and required, the more money they can make. So that's me being a little cynical maybe about the whole industry around business plans. But to me, it comes down to, is there a demand for a business plan? If so, then you should make one and you should give it to them because it's something that they need in order to make progress towards giving you a distribution deal, buying your movie, investing in your movie, partnering with you, whatever it is that you're pitching. They're essentially saying, I really like this. The emotional side of the buyer has clicked on and said, yes, this is a good idea. We should do this. And then the logical side of the buyer is going, wait. We need more details. We need to know, is there a plan? How does it make money? What's the timeline? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And those are the things we're going to talk about is when we get into what goes into a business plan. But to me, I don't spend money creating those up front. I wait until someone asks me for them and then I make them.
Yeah. And I don't think your cynicism is unwarranted. I mean, I think that's there. You know, anytime somebody is trying to sell you something like, "Hey, I'm going to sell you my services to create a business plan," you got to make sure that there's a need for it. And maybe even as an independent filmmaker, somebody with that mentality of how do I save money wherever I can, or how do I keep this as contained as I need to contain it until I can really grow it and release it. A business plan isn't something, I agree, isn't something that you should hire somebody to do for you. I think as a filmmaker, you should definitely know what you're doing and know the process of how is this movie going to recoup for the people that I'm going to, for the people that are going to support me making it.
Yeah.
But to start spending money on a business plan, you're right. I wouldn't do that. So hopefully these tips will allow you as a filmmaker to create your own business plan.
Yeah. And not to take jobs away from filmmakers who are creating business plans for other people, but the last time that I made one, I did it with ChatGPT and it's great and it works and it delivers on what the investor was looking for. They're just asking for information. And so, this speaks to the context again of like, what is it for? Well, it's to show them that you know what you're talking about, that you have a plan, when you're raising money from investors, for example, your number one responsibility is to make a return for the investors. Ideally, you do that by making a really great movie that makes money. But regardless, the number one responsibility is to get a return for your investors, because that's what you're establishing with this relationship is, hey, I want you to invest in this thing. And the subtext is, I'm going to help you make more money so you can do it again in the future, which is what investors want to do. They want to keep making money and keep doing more of that type of investment. So the business plan exists to show them that you know how to do that. And you don't need necessarily to pay somebody to do it, to make a 20-page document for you. You can very much get like 80, 90% of the way there with AI tools today. And that's my little aside for how to make.
I think it's very relevant. And I agree with everything you're saying. My only comment on, and maybe this was just a slip of the tongue to say, that make a really great movie and it'll make money. And I want to I know you know this, but making a great movie does not guarantee making money, which is why what I believe we need to do as independent filmmakers is make a great business plan that will make money. If that business plan is, I want to make a cheap film and take it, my lights just went out, so maybe this is a bad idea. I want to make a cheap film and just put it on YouTube for streaming. Honestly, that might make you money. It doesn't have to be a good film. Plenty of bad movies make money. Plenty of good movies don't. But a bad business plan isn't going to make you money.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm going. Okay. So enough of that. Let's get into it. Executive summary is, I want to give you like 8 things that are a part of a business plan. You can kind of pick and choose depending on what your investor needs, but generally you'll want these 8 things. Number 1 is an executive summary. This will include, the film title, the log line, the summary of the plan. So for X independent film, I said this business plan outlines the financing, production, and distribution strategy for this film. And then what it is, it's a character-driven independent drama. Here's the budget range. We'll be financing it through these methods. And this is the unique selling proposition, right? This is why this film is going to work. So it's just very nice, couple of paragraph overview of what your business partners are going to want to know about this film.
Yeah, really great. And these are things that are very standard, right? You can Google this, you can ask ChatGPT, you can say what goes into a business plan, and it'll give you these kind of 8 standard sections. So I'm glad we're going to go through them. But again, I think it's in the context of what does the investor actually want to know? Do they want to know that you have a distribution plan? Are they more interested in how much money you need and how you're going to spend it? Are they interested in the timeline? Like, what is it that they are demanding from you? Not in a demanding way, but like, what is it that they're interested in? What do they need more information about? And how do you deliver that to them in a compelling way? Ideally, I've read a lot of business plans that are just very dry and very boring to read. And I'm like, this isn't exciting. It should still share some of the tone and the vibe of the project. And so if it's a neo-noir, can you do it in a cool way? If it's a period piece like Faith of Angels, can you do it in a way that kind of shows that you're a creative person making a business plan? I know I'm adding an extra layer of complexity to this, but I love that stuff. And if it just looks like every other business plan, I think there's a missed opportunity there.
Okay, well maybe that comes through in the unique selling proposition.
I think so.
This is a period piece, and this movie is a faith-based, true crime, intrigue, drama.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if we compare a pitch deck to a business plan. A pitch deck is here's what it is. A business plan is here's how it works. Here's how we're going to do it. Right. But I think there should be a little bit of connective tissue between the two where it feels like they're part of the same business plan. They're part of the same creative thought. And so I'm just adding this extra layer of complexity to say there's an opportunity there to make really cool business plans that align with the other assets that you've created to get this movie funded or produced or distributed or whatever it might be.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And in my experience, I have not done that with the films that I've made as far as the business plan goes, because these are typically, they have the pitch deck and that's all the gloss and glamour and kind of the sexy appeal of the film. And then the business plan says, look, we are approaching this very methodically. We have a playbook. We're going to run it. And this is how it's going to work. And these are people that are looking at it that are used to writing large checks for real estate and other business. And, you might have a glossy brochure if you're going to buy a piece of property. But at the end of the day, you're going to have a contract or a plan, or really we're starting an LLC with each film and say, this is the executive summary. This is the LLC that we're starting. And so in my experience, I've tried to separate those two and be very detailed in one and very creative in the other.
Yeah.
Okay, number 2, film overview. This would contain your synopsis, the genre, the tone, any similar films, and not necessarily comp titles. And Darren, I know you have an opinion on comp titles, but you do want similar films and themes. You want the business plan person, the reader of this, who's looking at this from a very technical, almost manual approach, to think, okay, this is what this film is. This is what it feels like. We want to kind of take the opportunity of them to create their own vision of it, because I can tell you it will never align with yours. Take that out so that your vision is very clear as to what this film is and what the business is.
Yeah, this document exists to convey information and on your behalf, right? You're saying, here's the business plan, and that saves us an hour-long conversation where you're asking me questions and I'm giving you answers. You're saying, I've already thought about it, and you can read it in 10 minutes or 5 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever it is. So what is the information you're trying to convey? And you're basically saying, okay, here's what it is. And if you can do that in a compelling way, if you can do that in a very clear way to where now you've given them your vision of what the film is, now they're on the same page. Now they can take the next step. So it's almost a little bit of a rabbit hole that you're creating of you need to know this in order to get to section 2, and you need to know this in order to get to section 3, because you'll want that context of what the movie is and what it's like and what it's going to feel like before you get into budget, before you get into timeline, before you get into how the returns and the waterfall work. So you're thinking of it a little bit like a story. You're thinking of it, what does the reader need to know first, and then second, and then third, and then fourth and fifth. So it's really smart to think of it that way because it is conveying information, and you've got to do it in a really clear way, because if you start out with the really, really deep stuff and they're lacking the context, they're going to go, this business plan doesn't make any sense, even though it does if you just kind of reverse the order of things.
Yeah, I agree with that. You're definitely walking them through step by step. Here's what it is. And then the next step of that would be this target audience or market analysis. This is a section that you want in there. You say, here's our primary audience for this film. This film, as mentioned, this is a faith-based film. We're looking for faith-based audiences that are looking for inspirational, thought-provoking storytelling. Secondary audience. If our film sub-thread is this mystery, true crime, thriller, faith-based thriller,
Nice.
then we want, that's a secondary audience. And then you'll also want to list in this section the market demand for that. Like what shows, what indicators are there out there that would justify this film right now. So say, okay, faith-based films are seeing right now a surge in the box office. That's why we want to get on this. And same thing with streaming platforms. They're very interested in acquiring faith-based content. Therefore, it would make this a good business. That's our target audience and market analysis.
Yeah. I think that's a really important thing to highlight. And I see this mistake a lot with business plans from younger, well, not even just exclusively younger filmmakers. I see it a lot when people send me materials and I get to the comp section. They go, here are some other movies that are like ours, and here's how they've done in the marketplace. And often they pick the best ones, right? If it's a little indie made in Utah, they're going Napoleon Dynamite. And look, it made tens of millions of dollars in the box office.
$45 million at the box office. Yeah, I cannot tell you how many investors I've ended the conversations with, potential investors, once they bring up Napoleon Dynamite.
Yeah.
I love it. I love the show. But if that's what they're looking for, then that's they're looking for lightning in a bottle. I don't play the lottery.
Exactly. So that's from the investor side, but the filmmakers are the ones causing that issue, right? They're saying, here's a movie that's like ours in genre, budget, production value, style, etc., tone. And here's the example of 2 or 3 other movies that have done really, really, really well, like ridiculously well, like unnaturally well. They're breakout successes. And it's disingenuous, I think, because it's really not being true to the marketplace to say this is what we could do with our movie, because it has the same genre and the same budget and the same et cetera. What you highlighted is really smart, which is saying these are examples of the existing demand for movies like this, right? You're not putting it in the positioning of we're going to make $45 million in the box office as well. You're saying there were 4.5 million people that went and saw this movie in theaters. So that's millions of people that potentially would want to see a movie like ours. I've seen 3 business plans already for horror movies. And I don't know why people keep sending me horror films, but everybody has a horror, and they're sending me Terrifier 3. And I'm going, first of all, it's the 3rd movie in a franchise that has a long history with a growing audience over the last however many years. And it was a breakout success. It made 80 or 90 million in theaters off of a $2 million budget. And it's like, you cannot replicate that. Like you can't create a plan that says this is how we're going to replicate that with our movie. And what you could do instead, though, that would actually work, is saying, look, this is a low budget, independent NC-17 horror movie, and almost 10 million people saw it in theaters. Okay, great. Now you've shown me there's 10 million people who enjoy this type of horror film. Great. And yours is like that? Okay, awesome. That means we could tap into that existing market. But the positioning of we can also make 80 million in theaters is really not accurate, and it's not true. And I think people need to stop doing it.
it's tough because you do get excited about it, and you want people to get excited about your potential, right? And you can't ignore, like, hey, this really did happen. And so one of the things that I typically do is I have my when we'll get into my estimates, and you say, look, you have your conservative, your target, your hey, we succeeded, maybe those are reverse conservative, we succeed at, but this is our target. And then I do build a section for the home runs. I say, hey, look, these are the home runs. This is the potential. You could do that. That's not at all why you're investing. That's not why I want to meet with you, because we don't control that. It's like saying we're going to produce a viral video. No, you're not. You're going to produce a video. The market determines if it goes viral or not.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. And I love that positioning or that framing of the conversation, this section of the business plan, to say, look, we've done our research and we have an idea of what's possible with this film, given all these different parameters: budget, cast, genre, writer, director, marketplace, etc. So that's really smart, because why is an investor reading a business plan? They want to know, is it possible to put in $1 and make 2 or 5 or 10? Because again, an investor wants to invest in something, not give you money that's going to go away and never be returned. If they give you $1 million, they want that million and then some, because that means they can do it again and again and again and again. They want to invest in films, not just one film. So by showing them, hey, here's the risk, but here's how we've kind of covered the downside, and here's what's possible in the marketplace based off of really great research by, ideally, some contact that you have that works at a distribution company. They're really great people to tap into to say, hey, what is the existing market for these types of films? This budget, this genre, this audience, et cetera, this type of release plan. And they can pull actual comps. And then you can say, look, here's 4 other movies that made between this and this. We're targeting conservatively that we could do this. And that means we break even, or it means that we make X amount of our budget back, and then we'll make the rest in digital sales or international or whatever it is. But you're telling the investor, you're speaking their language and saying, we know you want to put money in and get money out. Here's how it works. Here's what we think this movie could do. And here's our plan to make it happen. And as long as you do that, it doesn't necessarily matter what the actual numbers are, whether it's 5X or 10X or 100X on the back end. They just want to know that there's a plan. And ideally, that there is a way for them to make multiples on their money.
Section 4 is the production plan. So once they kind of have the big overview of, like, here's this, and here's what this movie is, and here's the potential for it, we do want to give them the production plan. And I usually keep this very brief and over light, because we all know that production can change, and usually the schedules are dependent on, contingent upon how much money you've raised in time for production. And so I keep this light, but I do give a budget overview, and I say, okay, this film, the estimated budget is between 750 to 850,000, with an additional 150,000 raised for reserved for marketing. I give them a production timeline, saying, like, pre-production needs to start in Q2 2025, principal photography will be in Q3, and post-production in Q4, right? And then the festival circuit and distribution starts Q1 and Q2 2026. I often will go into shooting locations or suggested shooting locations based on incentives and things, why we're likely to shoot in a certain state or in a certain city. What advantage do we have shooting there, whether it's a tax rebate or a location that we own, or an actor that lives close by, or whatever it is. And then we'll also involve, in this production plan, we involve key crew and personnel. We say, look, involved in this is this such and such a director. He or she have directed these previous films, and they've done this much. Or this actor is already committed, or this screenwriter has a history of success, and so they're attached. We don't need to get into people that they don't know, or that aren't, this is the first time, unless there's an advantage to that. An investor is going to say, get excited about so-and-so's first, brother is filming this movie because he owns a camera. So you want to make sure that those are selling points.
Yeah. Dude, the context of this section is so important because what you are able to show an investor, a distribution partner, whatever it is look at how far we've already come and look at the momentum that we've already built for this project. If you have attachments, if you have tax incentives, if you have locations, if you have partners, whether it's sponsors or distribution partners or production partners, whatever it is, you're saying to them, the subtext is this movie is happening with or without you. So if you want to be a part of this, it's happening. We're starting production spring of 2025. So get on the train or it's leaving the station. There's the subtext for that. That's the context and the framing, which is really great in a business plan to be able to show we're making this movie, but we'd love for you to be involved. And if you don't want to be, we're talking to 100 other people and one of them is going to say yes at some point. So it gives a little bit of a time wall to say, you need to make a choice pretty soon. This isn't something we're thinking about doing in the future. I definitely have seen business plans which are like very, very, very early in the process. And they're saying, give us money now and we'll figure all this stuff out. And that's a harder sell to an investor because they're going, well, that could take you a year. That could take you 6 months. Like, why haven't you already done some of that stuff that's free to do? Like, it's free to call your friend and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this movie. Can I attach you as the cinematographer? Can I attach you as the casting director? Can I talk to the local film commission about, is there money in the incentive program? Okay, like have those conversations. Those are free. It doesn't cost you anything. You can do it in a week. And at that point, you can start showing some momentum and some progress that you've already made for this section, which makes the investor think, oh, this is happening. I should probably make a decision pretty soon.
Yeah, hopefully you want to get far enough down the road that yes, this is happening, but not making commitments that you start to lose money. You know, you don't make pay or play deals with a cast member, or don't book a location or anything, because it does take a while, as you know, Darren. It does take a while to raise money, and so it is a little bit of a which comes first, chicken and egg scenario. But I agree that those conversations can happen. Just be very transparent with whomever you're reaching out to. You know, reach out to your actor. Hey, we have a project. I'm very interested in doing it. I am raising money right now, and I'd love to attach you because I think that would help convince investors.
Yeah.
Like, okay, great. But if it doesn't happen, you know, this is all just kind of equity right now. But that's a good conversation to have. And you're right. It definitely kind of starts that train moving. Number 5, financial plan and investment structure. And this is key. This is vital. It's very important to be able to know about this. What is your funding strategy, and what is your revenue model, and what is the return model? Again, so there's a combination of, yes, comp titles and accurate comp titles, or at least, you know, if you're with a distributor, what have they distributed in the past? You might say, oh, Napoleon Dynamite has done this and this and this. Well, that was by Fox Studios. So have you ever distributed through Fox Studios? Do you have a contact there? Then don't put it in a comp title, right? Mm-hmm. So as an independent investor or an independent filmmaker, make sure that the world you build and the plan that you build is accurate to the film that you are creating. If you are saying we are going to pitch to such and such, Netflix and things like that, or a distributor, then perhaps that's who you should be pitching this business plan to.
Yeah.
Let's see. I mentioned, so funding strategy, your private investors, you know, you'd say, hey, we're raising equity-based funding from independent film financiers. We're also getting production grants from local film commissions or organizations who have a similar interest in this story. We're getting tax incentives from state governments, and then we'll raise this much via crowdfunding. Right. So there's your funding strategy. And people want to know if it's debt or equity investment and so forth. So do yourself a favor and kind of research that, so that when somebody asks those questions, if you're having those conversations, that you can intelligently talk about that, or at least have a conversation where you can say, let's find that out together, or let me research that. But you just don't want to be blindsided with terms that you're not familiar with.
Yeah. I think you said it. Like that's an important section. There are a lot of line producers on the internet that will tell you that it's important to have a line item budget in your business plan. Maybe, If an investor is asking for a line item budget, then you should get them one. If they're not, don't spend thousands of dollars paying a line producer to create one for you up front.
Well, I think that's the key. You say, can we have your line item budget? You say, here's what that costs in order for me to make that, and I would love to be able to provide that for you. I would need some development funds. Are you willing to commit to some development funds to help me do that?
Yeah.
Because you can't. Yeah. Now you're just spending and spending and spending, and they say, oh, great. Well, let's see you shoot a short film for it. Great. Here's what it costs in order to do that. Is that something?
Yeah.
Right.
But I've seen a lot of filmmakers go to a line producer, pay them $1,500 or $2,000 to create a line item budget for them at a certain budget level, because that's where they think the film is going to get made. And then they go to the next investor and they go, well, can I see a budget at half that budget or twice that budget? Well, now they got to go back and ask for another one. And maybe that line producer doesn't know that budget. So they got to find a different line producer. Now they're spending another $1,500 and again and again and again. And so it's hard to give a definitive answer because every film is different. Every conversation is different. But I would say lead with not needing one until someone asks to see one. And at that point, you can have that conversation around, well, yeah, but we need some development funds to do that level of prep, right? Because now you're getting into prep for the movie. You're saying we're kind of committing to this budget, this location, this size of production. How are we going to do that? Okay, well, get some people committed and help put that together, or get to the point where you've got a little bit of development money within your own production company where you can say, yeah, we're going to spend $5,000 every time we take a movie out to the marketplace. We're going to create a temp trailer, or not a trailer, a temp poster. We're going to create the business plan. We're going to put a really nice pitch deck together, and we're going to spend some money on these things. And that's okay too. But I really would avoid just thinking that in order to go have conversations with investors, we need to have a $2,000 line item budget created by some line producer on the internet. So get resourceful and go start having the conversations first. And then when they ask for things that you don't have, say, great, yeah, let me get that to you in the next week or two, which is totally fine. It's not a bad thing to say, oh yeah, we're working on that. Or, oh, no one's asked for that yet. So if we're at that stage and you're interested, I'd love to talk about, are you interested in financing that, the development portion, or yeah, let me get that to you in a week. This happened to me on my fund where I didn't have what's called a private placement memorandum. It's kind of rare to have those for a fund. You'll have those for individual investments, but not necessarily for a fund. So I didn't have a private placement memorandum. So an investor said, great, I'm ready. Send me the PPM. I said, great, I don't have one. Let me put one together for you. He's like, oh, that's interesting. I'm like, look, I've got other investors that have come in. They did not ask for one, so I didn't spend the money to create one. So then it took me a week or two, and I sent him the PPM, and he said, great, looks good. Okay, but I mean, we're talking like this is me at my level in my career. I still don't spend money I don't have to spend until somebody asks for it, in which case I know that spending a little bit of money to create a PPM is going to get me tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of investment. At that point, it's worth the expense. So don't wait to go start pitching your project because you don't have the money to create a line item budget, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Rant over.
I know it's a good rant and a great point. And man, I got hung up on your PPM talk because I remember creating a PPM for my first film because an investor asked for it, a potential investor asked for it, and I spent the money and time and effort and energy to have one created, and then he didn't come in. It's what a waste. But yeah, I was certainly not raising a film fund.
Yeah.
So yeah, be wise and just do the work that you can do, and keep the conversation going. I think with your investors, like that's the idea. There's no if it's working and they're asking questions, it's a great thing. You're putting together a business to create this film, and so they should be people that you should be able to have conversations with and push back and agreements and compromises and figure out how to do this together within certain limits.
Yeah.
Don't want to leave the door open there for creative. Okay, and then also in that section, don't make sure that you do put your investor returns. Like, what is the revenue model we anticipate, or this is how we generate money at the box office. You're not talking about amounts or estimates at this time, but just say this is the method for creating revenue from box office. This is the method for creating revenue from streaming or VOD, and this is ancillary revenue. Um, and so these are opportunities that the investor could say, "Oh, what are your amounts?" and things like that. Then you can get into comp titles or past performance. But in this plan, in the investment structure, you're not necessarily talking about those numbers. Number 6, we're almost done, Darren. This is great. Marketing and distribution plan. This is key. You want
Yes.
to have in your business plan the marketing plan. What is your early awareness campaign? This is our strategy, right? We're going to have an early awareness campaign. So we'll start in the pre-production phase by generating audience engagement before filming starts. This is not just, I'm going to post it on my Facebook page and talk about things that maybe may or may not happen. But this is an actual concentrated marketing plan that establishes the branding of the film very early on. Darren, you did an amazing job at this with Faith of Angels, and that was a little bit of a unique scenario because we were making that in sort of a period where we weren't actively promoting it, but you made sure that photography was being taken and stories were being highlighted so that when we did start that marketing, you could kind of create that pre-production and production process.
Yeah, it's so important. And in this process, you're also showing that you understand what the movie is, what's the hook for the movie, and who the audience is for it, and how you're going to reach them. Like, you need to know those things. It can't just be, well, there are horror movie fans out there, there are faith-based movie fans out there, so they're going to show up. That's just not realistic anymore. Like, the idea of if you build it, they will come. There is so much content in the world today, and you're competing not just with the other movies in theaters, but what's on their phones and their social media platforms, what's on Netflix, what's on YouTube, what's on TV, what's on gaming. Like, you're competing against all of that for people's time, attention, and money. And so you need to be able to say in this strategy part of the document, this is who we are after, and this is how we're going to reach them. This is where they are. This is the platforms that they are on. This is the media that they consume and where we can reach them. These are the influencers that I think you need to be at that level of granularity at this point in the process, because marketing is often left as an afterthought, something that other people handle once the movie's made. My job as a filmmaker is to make the movie. It's the marketers and the salespeople and distributors' jobs for it to make money and reach an audience. I don't think that model exists anymore. I think as a filmmaker in 2025 and beyond, you have to be thinking about the audience at the same time you're thinking about who's going to invest in this project. And if you don't know what the poster looks like, and if you don't know who the audience is and what is the thing that's going to hook them and get them to pay attention and to get them to want to desire to see this movie, I think you got to do that first, or at very least at the same time as you're raising money from investors. So it's really, really key to show that you have an understanding of this. And if you don't, then you need to find a marketing partner that's going to come in very, very early in the process and is going to give you some of that insight for your business plan and say, here's what I think the hook is, here's the audience, here's how we're going to reach them, so that it can be part of this document.
I think in this marketing strategy, that is the early awareness campaign. You talk about different partnerships. You talk about social media and influencer engagement. Any grassroots campaign that you're planning on doing, just cover your press and PR strategy. Hey, this is a faith-based movie. We'll be reaching out to national Christian media outlets and podcasts and film blogs. One of the things we did with Faith of Angels is that we knew that one of our key audience was going to be the same audience as Angel Studios audience. These people are subscribing and paying for content that is uplifting and inspiring, and Faith of Angels aligns with that. So in our business plan, we involved them. We involved Angel Studios in our during production. We were able to invite Angel Studios out to the set and to be a part of that. They at that point were our audience, and it's come full circle now that we're releasing that movie today on their platform.
Yeah.
So You want to, always be thinking about distribution and marketing and make that a part of your business plan to show that that's what you're thinking about.
I think that's an interesting thing you highlighted is who already has the audience that you're after. Because making a connection with Angel Studios is a single relationship, right? It's us and them. Whereas
Yes.
they have relationships with 500,000 people or 20 million email subscribers or whatever it is they have. They have an audience of people they can reach that now we can tap into for free. It doesn't cost us anything to market to their people and tell them this movie now exists on the platform. So that's a ton of leverage. And so you got to apply that same thinking to your distribution partners, your sales partners, your marketing partners, your influencers, who already has the audience that you need to reach in order for this movie to be successful. And think about those people first, not necessarily about the end audience. Because, yeah, I'm not reaching some grandpa in Nebraska on LinkedIn. Like, he's not in my audience, so I'm not able to reach that guy. And I don't necessarily want to spend money to advertise to him on Facebook and hope that he's on the platform during the 2 weeks that we're spending money, and hope that he sees the ad and hope that he clicks on it and hope that he goes to the Cinemark app and buy a ticket. That's too much hope for the budgets we have as indie filmmakers for our marketing. And so who is he already listening to find movies to go and watch with his wife and his family on a Friday afternoon? Start there. So you really got to be thinking about who already has the audience and how do you get them to partner with you and be part of your team or to be part of your marketing strategy. And that's where you're going to get the leverage in order to reach the millions of people you need in order to make this movie successful.
Number 7 is risk assessment and mitigation. I think it's important in your business plan to acknowledge the risks, both that filmmaking is a risk, independent film is an extreme risk, and this is what we're doing to mitigate those. So you talk about production risks, those might include budget overruns or casting delays or location challenges. And here's what we're doing to mitigate that. We're working with an experienced line producer. We have contingency funding, or we're controlling a location because we own it, whatever it is. And then also talk about market risks, right? You've got niche audience limitations or just the volatility of theatrical film or independent film. And this will lead us actually segue into our discussion at the end of this episode about the box office. But box office is so unpredictable. So here's the market risks, and this is what we're doing to mitigate those. Right? We have a strong festival contact, or we've got a proven relationship with a distributor that is going to release this movie regardless of other challenges and so forth. But acknowledge the risks and talk about what you're doing to overcome them. You want to win the race. You want to beat the investor. You want to break your own movie before somebody else can. Right? Say, yes, these are the break points, and this is what we're doing to make sure it doesn't break. Did I lose you? I think you're muted. Did I mute you?
Oh, weird.
You
I got muted.
there.
Well, all the amazing things I just said, no one will never know because I was muted. No, I just said no notes. Like, that is really smart and really good. And
we didn't even get to hear that part. That's good.
That is good. That's why I repeated it.
Well, good. And then the final thing that I usually put in my business plan is the call to action and the next steps. Right. This is where we are. We're seeking initial funding, or we've already raised 25%. We're seeking the remaining 75%. And these are the benefits. Right. This is what we're providing you. There's equity ownership in this. You'll get first look access to different screenings or investor events. You get first priority on our next project. And in order to do that, we're acting by this date. By the end of the month, we need to be at 75% funded so we can go into pre-production or whatever. We need to secure these agreements with potential cast. Therefore, we need this investment to be made by such and such date. But it's important to put that in this business plan.
Yeah, the time aspect is really essential. You need to be able to tell people, hey, this is happening by this date. If you want to be a part of it, that's your time window in order to take action, because you can't have people thinking about it for 6 months. The movie's going to be done by then, right? But if you don't put that in there, they might think, oh, this is something that will happen sometime this year, so I've got time to think about it. Well, you don't want them thinking about it for 6 months. You need the money now because you want to be in production in 3 months. So be just very clear and direct, and it's okay to put that in there. It's okay to say we need investors in by this date. They want that clarity so they know when they need to make a decision by.
It's scary to do it. I understand and can relate that it's scary to say, oh, if you're not in by such and such date, we'll move on, because you think, oh, I've already come this far with an investor. This guy's one of the 50 people that I've talked to that is actually talking to me. But I think that there is value in saying, look, the goal is to make the movie, not to talk about making the movie.
Yeah.
And so if we're just talking about it, it's not an investor to get. And that comes from, honestly, personal experience. This past project that I've been pitching for a while, I've been working with a particular individual, and they've been very interested, very supportive of the project, and I'm very excited about their involvement. They've done projects with me in the past, but I discovered that we were just talking a lot about it, and perhaps there was an interest in their part of saying, "Oh, I'm needed," and I think there was value in me saying, we're going to move on to people who are ready at this time, and we'll come to you for another project, which is fine. But we need to move on for this project. And this last week, they called me, like they pursued me and said, okay, where are you on the project? I'm interested in being a part of it.
There you go.
So don't be afraid to move forward with making your movie.
Yeah, a lot of times we think that all of the value lies in the hands of the investors because they have the money, and that's the resource that we lack right now. But no, the value lies in the project that you've created. And
there is only one of those.
There's only one of those. You have the only one, and you kind of need to have that energy as you're presenting and pitching and sending out business plans of like, this is the only one of these. If you want this, you have to go through me. I'm the one who has it. Let's talk, right? And so people need to feel that. That's part of the buying process for them to finally make the decision of, okay, the pull of this opportunity is greater than my anxiety around it, greater than doing nothing. I need to be a part of it. And everyone's going to react differently. Some people will show up pre-sold. They're like, hey, I heard you're doing a movie. I want in. I've had investors say that to me about the fund. You've had people say that to you about movies where they go, I want to invest in indie films and you're making the kind that I want to invest in. Can we do something together? That's the best case scenario. But most of the people are going to be on the other end of the spectrum of like, oh, I've never really thought about indie film. Let me think about that. Well, that moment is not the time to say, are you in for $100,000? No, they're just barely starting to think about it. So you've got to meet them where they are. And that might be a pitch deck. It might be a short conversation about what investing in movies feels like, right? So they can start thinking about it, noodling on it, and thinking about it on their ride to work. And they maybe listen to our podcast, or they read a blog post, or they watch one of your old movies. They're going to go through this buying process. And at some point, they're going to reach that threshold of like, okay, I need to make a decision here because XYZ reasons. And that's when they're going to be asking for more information, like a business plan or a pitch deck, or have you done a teaser? Can I watch it? What is your last movie that you did and how much did it make? Like that's when they're asking those questions. And at some point, your business plan and your pitch deck and all your materials they exist to give them enough information, enough pull, enough demand for them to go, I want to make this choice to invest in this thing and to cross that threshold. So it also is really important to understand where people are at in that buying process and how these different materials you're creating are helping pull them through that process to get to the point where they can actually make a decision.
Hopefully you can get to that point, Darren. Hopefully those conversations continue and you find great partners to invest. That is not nervous money. That is not vanity money. Vanity money, but it's just money that is invested in a trusted filmmaker, and you've got a good partnership. And I think that's how good businesses form, and independent film can be part of that.
Yeah, 100%. That's good
man.
stuff, man.
Those are all the points I have.
That's awesome. I'm excited. Like we've created all these really great resources for filmmakers to say, can you talk to me about pitching? Yeah, here's an hour episode Can you talk to me about raising money? Yeah. Can you talk to me about business plans? Yeah. Like, we're creating a little MBA here for filmmakers, which I'm very much here for. Great stuff. Let's talk about box office, because this weekend was kind of interesting because there was a Super Bowl that happened on Sunday, and that kind of messes with box office, right?
I guess. I don't know. You mean 45 million box office in the top 10? You mean that's not good?
Uh-huh. So yeah, top overall gross was 53 million, the lowest of the lowest of this year for sure. 85 million was last weekend. So, a 36.9% drop week over week. And you can see it even in the top 10 films. The number one film was $13 million. So, if you take an average ticket price of, I think it's like $10.78 now. I just rounded 10 because easy math. About 50 million people went and, or not 50 million, 5 million people went and saw a movie last weekend. Whereas the week before that, it was 8.5 million people that went and saw a movie. That's a big difference. And so when you're thinking about strategically when you're going to release your movie, well, don't release a football movie the weekend of the Super Bowl, because 150 million people are going to watch that, and 5 million people are going to go to the movies that weekend.
I like it. That makes sense. Yeah, yep. You want to pay attention to when you're releasing your film, and we've done an entire season on that almost in our first season, talking about selecting the right date for releasing your movies.
Yeah. And just to highlight again, this opinion we have around release strategy, if it's a low number one movie, if the box office gross is low for the number one film, like in this case, $13.8 million gross this weekend for Dogman, the number 10 movie, Moana 2, 1.6, which is a high number given like our history of talking about box office for like 8 months. Like 1.6 is a high number for the top 10 spot. There have been weeks that are as low as $450,000. So this is like 4 times the amount that you have to make to break the top 10. And why does that matter? Again, because if you can break the top 10 as an independent, you're going to get a ton of free awareness about your movie, because there are lots of outlets that will write about the top 10 movies for the weekend. And there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who are going to see, here's the top 10 for this last weekend. And if your movie's in it and they've never heard of it, guess what? A percentage of them are going to click on your thing, go to Box Office Mojo, go to IMDb, go to Rotten Tomatoes, wherever it is, and watch a trailer and go buy a ticket. And so that's free. That's free awareness that you get by breaking the top 10. If you can get a box office opening weekend of $500,000 to $2 million, you can break the top 10 if you're doing it strategically. So,
case in point,
yeah.
Look at the number 7 movie, Becoming Led Zeppelin. No distributor of note. It's not a major distributor. I guess it's a Sony Pictures Classics. It's the number 7 movie. They put it on 369 screens, so they knew it was a very independent release, and it did almost $7,000 per screen and broke the top 10.
Yeah.
So 369 screens broke the top 10.
Yeah,
we've opened movies wider than that, on wider screens than that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a good strategy.
It's a great strategy. They actually, like, that's the model that we were preaching when we were talking about distribution theatrically. And I mean, they did $2.5 million in a weekend on a documentary on 369 screens. Like, that is really, really smart. They did a great job as far as, like, not super limited releases on 1 or 2 or 4 screens. They have the highest per screen average, 369 screens. The next big one was 193 screens, $1,800, like 4x the per screen average of Parasite's re-release. Then you still have a couple of movies that are in 3,000 plus theaters. You got Dogman, Hard Eyes, and Love Hurts, which are new releases, wide releases, but they made between 1,800 and 3,500 per screen. So it doubled those guys. So it all comes down to that per screen average. They're going to be in theaters for a while if they want to be. It's pretty awesome.
It's cool.
Love it.
Darren, great conversation, a great episode. Thanks very much. Any final notes, any plans this week?
My plan right now is to ask the audience to go share this podcast with all their friends and filmmaking acquaintances, because these are conversations that we're having with individuals, and then we're putting them on the podcast. And so they're super valuable, I think. And I'm excited again that we're building this kind of library of experience. I hesitate to say knowledge, but experience that we have over our 20 years or whatever careers in film. So please share it with people. Tell them that this podcast exists. Share it on your socials. Let people know about this podcast, because it's something we're really passionate about. And the more people that we can reach, the better it gets. So thanks, man. Love doing this with you.
Yeah. Thanks for the great conversation. Good luck, and can't wait to chat with you next week.
Same. See you then.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Truly Independent. To join us on the journey, be notified and ask us questions about today's episode, head over to 3coinpro.com/podcast and put in your name and an email address. If you're a fan of the show, please leave us a review on your favorite podcast app and be sure to share this. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week. Our intro and outro music is Election Time by Kjartan Abel.